Hey guys, thanks for joining us. It was such a hell of a week in Montecito. You know, the days of our Montecito lives are turning. That's my new soap opera, and I love it. And so I grabbed old Tom Sykes, the royalist, to help me go through all of the craziness. And when I tell you something dropped every single day, it was I'm not lying. I mean, I made this just because it had to be said. It had to be shown. There's no way. And now we're going to start Sunday, Tom. This is it's a big one because Sunday was the day that this book was serialized in the Times of London. And just before we start, I have to let you all know that the Times of London is the paper. It's like the New York Times of England. It is a huge deal that this is happening. And they serialized Tom Bower's book, and of it, the 3 bombs, there were 3 serializations. That almost never happens. The first one was Harry's been brainwashed, Camilla told friends. The second one was all about the Centabali bombs landing. And the third one, Meghan, is all about Meghan. So, Tom, what were your favorite parts of these 3 serializations? And what really blew your head apart?
Well, my favorite part was when I found Tom Bower's phone number in my phone and called him up and got him to go on my podcast on Tuesday. So he's coming on the Royalist podcast on Tuesday, which you're going to be on as well.
Yes. Yes, yeah. But also, wow, Tom, you know everybody. I can't handle it. And I know you're going to slip me that number later because I need to talk to him.
Yeah, so it's really exciting. I mean, look, he's a brilliant writer. So funny enough, I read one of his books absolutely years ago at school, which was a biography of Mohammed Fayed. And I only discovered years later, it had a really interesting genesis that Mohammed Fayed had basically booked him to basically write a sort of hagiography, a kind of glowing, account of his life. And Bower kind of took one look at it and thought, wow, there's a much better story here, and did this independent story. And he's a very interesting writer. And I'm really looking forward to speaking to him, as I've said on my show, because one of the things that he says, the key to his work, he's always described it as, I find the victims. And that's exactly what he does in this book. He finds all these people who've been victimized, who've had a bad time at the hands of Meghan and Harry, whether it's minor or major or whatever, but it's the detail, and it's the accretion of detail. It's Sophie Chandola. Do you know what I mean? It adds up, and it adds up, and it adds up. And, basically the Sussexes very foolishly, in my opinion, issued a kind of hysterical statement saying that it was melodramatic. Well, I mean, for these two to accuse anybody of melodrama seems a little bit like pots and kettles and all of that. But I mean, yeah. So it was a tough start to the weekend for Harry and Meghan, to be sure.
Well, I love that they also called him deranged, which is fabulous. Melodramatic and deranged. But of the things that we have talked about, and you and I have been talking about this because the excerpts, you guys, were so jaw-dropping. And for me, it was Sophie Chandoka's revenge, because Sophie Chandola, who accused Meghan and Harry of misogynoir, which is hating women and specifically Black women. And I'm with her on that, even though Meghan is technically half Black, but the way they treated Sophie was so horrible. And she had to take it because the mainstream press would not talk to her. Or if they did, they kind of cut her off. And Harry and Meghan made it look like Sophie had basically used the charity as her personal piggy bank. She was bankrupting it. It was all her fault. When frankly, this is a very well-renowned international lawyer who had been on the board for 4 years previously. So it's not just someone they picked up on the sidewalk. And I mean, Tom, what did you think about those claims specifically? Like the bit about on the jet?
Yeah, so the Sintobole stuff, I think, is some of the strongest stuff in the book. So there's, as everybody will remember, there was this famous video incident where they're on the prize giving ceremony, and Meghan kind of effectively orders Sophie Chandola to move, and it's all very awkward, and she has to duck under Harry and Meghan in this cup to get out of the way. And after that happened, and people wrote about it and said, oh my God, this is a really strange setup. They called her up and said, you have to deny that there's any tension between us. And she said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not here to do PR. I'm not here to do Sussex PR. And then there's this amazing story that they're on an airplane coming from, I think, Singapore, or going to Singapore, where they've got a big charity bash that subsequently goes horribly wrong. And she says to him, listen, we appreciate the fact that you have given and raised $1.1 million for the charity this year, but your brand is a problem for the charity, because people who signed up for this originally liked the royal family, and you are attacking the royal family. So we've done an audit of major brands, and they just don't want to be associated with you, Harry. So I don't know what to do. What are your suggestions? And rather than take it in the sort of spirit of constructive criticism that it went, he went mental, accused her of, having psychologically damaged him because he was so upset by being told this stuff, etc., etc., etc. I mean, it's really, really shocking. And again, it's so interesting because this story, it ended up with Sophie Chandola giving a ridiculously amazing, shocking interview on Sky News for like an hour, like on a live panel. But yeah, people very much did say, and the Sussex machine has consistently tried to belittle her. And the reality is, she's like a massive hotshot international lawyer. She worked for like Facebook and Meta. She was like the in-house attorney for like Meta or something. Do you know what I mean? She's like, as you say.
And also, you know what? The craziest bit for me, Tom, was Harry saying that she harmed him psychologically. I mean, no offense, grow a layer of skin. This is insanity. Everyone hurts him if you don't agree with him or say what he wants. I mean, that's a rough way to go through life, frankly. And it's not doing them any favors, because clearly we've seen neither of them can handle constructive criticism. And people like you and I are only here because of constructive criticism. So, it was a lousy weekend for sure. Also on Sunday, not only did they have to deal with the excerpts, but it was Oscar night. And guess who was not invited to any of the Oscar parties? Not the big Vanity Fair where her friend, the Kardashians, showed up. Not Jay-Z or Beyonce's big Chateau Marmont party. Her friend Beyonce. Wait, hold on. What is that? Oh, it's Beyonce texting. She ain't texting now. And she didn't go to the Elton John party, So Elton John, who is a member of Harry's lawsuit against the Associated Newspapers, it's just, now I'm sure they could have gone to Elton John, to be fair, but the big thing in LA, you cement your place as a B or C lister if you only go to the Elton John party, and don't go to the Vanity Fair, Beyonce, Jay-Z, or Madonna party after. So I'm sure whether she was invited to Elton or not, you can't just go to Elton's.
I told you my story about Elton's worst party, about the beef burgers. I might have told you this, but I'm going to tell you it again.
Yes,
so
please.
My second cousin, once removed, a distant cousin of mine called Christopher Sykes, is a photographer, and he covered the Rolling Stones tour in 1969. And Elton asked if he could get up on stage and play a song. And Mick said, yeah, right, you can play one song, Elton, come on up. So Elton came up and played his song, but then he wouldn't get off the stage, and he stayed on stage for the whole gig and played the whole song. And Mick was so angry at the end that Elton had organised a massive party and Mick banned everybody from going. He said, nobody's going to Elton's party. If you go to Elton's party, you're off the tour, you're out of the band. And he banned everybody from going. And apparently Elton John was sat there surrounded by hundreds of roasting pigs and chickens and burgers and champagne getting warm. So I believe you when you say that, but that's very interesting that Elton, so if you go to Elton's party, that's like, you've had to settle basically.
Elton's party is huge. So it's the AIDS Foundation, and any Tom, Dick, or Nutbag Harry can buy a ticket or be let in if you're press or whatever. It's huge, and it's not very selective. So if you only go to Elton's, or you're only invited to Elton's, and you need to cement your status, you don't go to Elton's if you're not invited to the others. You know what I mean? But
better just to pretend you've had a quiet night in washing your hair of your own volition.
Totally. Washing your hair. Absolutely. Now we've got this one. Hold on. We're going to talk about this because on Monday, both Tom and I wrote about this on our Substacks, that Meghan's latest hustle, selling her title, because it does say Duchess of Sussex on there, for the amazing sold out Girls Weekend in Australia, which she is doing with Gemma, a podcaster in Australia who, we'll get to that in a second. So she was saying it was sold out. However, you go on the website, you're like, I want to buy a ticket, sold out. But all you have to do is click the box that says be put on the wait list. And then you're put on the wait list, and you have to put all your socials in. You have to do a little testimonial. And a friend of mine did it. The testimonial was right. A kind of a manufactured sob story. And she had never posted about Harry or Meghan. Within hours, she was contacted. And they're like, we would love to have you. Please come. By the way, no refunds. You're going to have to do a twin share in this crappy hotel on Coogee Beach. I pronounce it Coogee because it rhymes with Poogie Beach, because the beach recently had fecal balls wash up on it. It smells like sewage, and Coogee is apparently the Aboriginal name for smelly. So that sounds like a damn good time to me, Tom. And it was just so funny. It's such an old marketing trick, isn't it? It's sold out. Get on the wait list. Here you go. You can have one. But also the fact that Meghan, they need to make sure that the right people are at the event, which means no journalists, no one who doesn't like Meghan, no one who's even going to criticize her. I mean, what were your thoughts about that, Tom?
Well, many years ago, Paula and I worked on Page 6 at New York Post together, and they were happy times. But one of the things that I remember most of going to nightclubs in those days, there'd often be a huge line outside the nightclub. And they'd say, no, sorry, it's completely full. It's completely full. And then finally, usually, of course, Paula would know somebody and talk her way in. You'd get in, and of course the place would be completely empty. And it's the oldest promoter's trick in the book, is to pretend that your place is sold out, that your jam is sold out, that you're only one per customer for your flower box, whatever. I mean, it's but at the end of the day, it's kind of fine if you're a kind of scrappy New York club promoter, but it's just so easy to test and disprove, as you showed, Paula, by sending the very simple expedient of sending somebody an email. And instantly all their credibility, so they just do these things over and over again that undermines their own credibility, makes it impossible to take them seriously. And just, if the whole point of this weekend is it's about being authentic, it's about being true, it's about being you, it's about being this, and it's all being sold on a lie, I mean, it's completely mad. It's completely mad.
The other thing is, Tom, the hotel it's at is the Intercontinental, and it's being refurbished from an older hotel. So it's not even brand new. It's a rebrand. They're putting in new carpet. and whatnot. But I'm also hearing Meghan's not even staying at that hotel for the weekend. Someone dropped me a line saying she's staying at the Fairmont in Sydney, which is a major 5-star hotel, like OMG. So she's not even staying. She's just going to drop in, do some photos, and GTFO, pawn off some, as ever spread and jam or whatever, and flower sprinkles, possibly a bottle of wine, champagne / champagne ale, $2 Chuck. But no, it is badonkers to me. But also,
she's not actually even staying at the hotel herself.
That's what I'm hearing.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love it. Come to this really nice hotel. I'll actually be staying somewhere else. But it's good. This place is, promise me, this place is going to be brilliant. And if I was shit and poor like you, I would stay there. But I'm not. I'm actually going to stay there. It's really, really, that is like, I mean, but you know what I mean? It's like, and any, like, it's just so undermining of any sense of authenticity, any sense that she wants to be there other than just for the paycheck.
Or the visibility, or to help her friend Marcus open Soho House Sydney, which also, don't get me off on that. But then the craziest thing as well is Gemma O, who is organizing this insanity with her, is, what am I saying? She's bankrupt. Her company had to go bankrupt, shut down, and she owes about $550K to the Australian taxman, which I don't think Meghan knew about this, because again, if you're going to go do something to associate yourself with someone, you got to do some homework. And by homework, I mean Google.
Yeah. And that's what's so shocking about this. I mean, yeah, I think they are saying that they didn't know and blah, 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 blah. But I mean, if they didn't know, like, this is a matter of public record. Like, it's either, yeah, as you say, just get somebody to do 1 hour of due diligence. It's not a lot to ask. And it does go back as well, Paula, I think, to when they were on that tour in Jordan. And I was saying that it kind of just felt so chaotic and disorganized, and you never knew where they were or what they were doing. And one moment they're at a refugee camp, the next moment they're at a rehab, and like rehab's called the Center for People with Terrible Addiction Problems or something. I can't remember what it's called, and it was like so badly organized. And I have some sympathy for them, because it's, as we all know, it's really hard to organize anything, right? Try organizing going on holiday with 6 of your mates. It's a blooming nightmare. And try organizing a knockoff state tour of Jordan. I mean, it's completely mad. And now that's why when the royals do this, there are dozens of people involved in the UK and probably hundreds of people involved in the host country. This is like just a bunch of guys in Meghan's house getting their phone out and going, let me call this girl I know. And it's just so like amateur and bad.
Well, it is. And it also gets them into trouble. So again, we've talked about this, but Jordan, they meet with a charity where they praised Hamas. They meet with the UNRWA that had 11 members actively participate in October 7th. And, a lot of people are wondering if Meghan is going to basically have the balls to show up at Bondi Beach and lay flowers like she did at Uvalde. Because here's the deal. Hold on, let me add this. There we go. Australians are not into this. They are not into the idea of them. They are not into their disaster tourism. And they're also saying, hey, we've got great wine. We actually have real jam, not fruit spreads. And we have our own flowers we can sprinkle. What the hell? And why are you coming here and insulting us basically by doing this half-assed girls' getaway? Harry, of course, is going to go to Melbourne to speak at a mental health in the workplace scenario, which, I find insanely ironic, because the guy hasn't really worked a day in his life. And if he has, he certainly didn't work 8 to 10 hours at it. straight, and certainly never went on staff anywhere and had to deal with a boss, because he was always the guy that people were catering to constantly.
I know I mean, it's beyond parody, really.
Mhm.
Harry's going to go and give a lecture on workplace sanity. I mean, it's just so absurd, and they've backed themselves into a terrible hole now, though, haven't they? Because
Yes.
they've paint, you know, they really, the world really was, when they left, before they, you know, blew everything up. But at the moment at which they left, there was a moment there where they could have left with grace and with dignity. They could have been really influential, or indeed even better, they could have bit their tongue and stayed within the royal family and been incredibly influential, powerful people now, shaping the global conversation about philanthropy, about ecology, about you know, and yeah, in that context of being royals, maybe they could have made some very guarded comments about the international situation here and there, now and again, you know, what have you. Like, the royals do that. We heard plenty, all this nonsense. And one of the incredible facts in Tom Bower's book was that when Meghan was getting her coat of arms done, she went to see the Herald at Arms. This was before she married, and asked that her coat of arms could be a songbird with the tongue cut out, i.e. a sort of silenced, you know, bird. And Tom Bower says this is sort of very clear evidence that she was pre-constructing this narrative, that she had been silenced, that she wasn't allowed to speak, that she was, you know, casting forward to what it was going to be. And I mean, it's completely ridiculous. We never stopped hearing from Meghan when she was a member of the royal family. We've never stopped hearing from her since. So I mean
talk about animal cruelty. Can you cut the tongue out? It looks better. The hell? But you know, and she just keeps going. So then this was one of my favorite new products. She was very excited. As all this mishigas and bad press is swirling, she's like, wait, over here. I've got a garden tea bloom box with a collab with an insanely expensive florist. And in the collab for, it says $255 with shipping and tax, it's going to be over $300. You get some flowers, some honey, and mint tea. Period.
Yeah, that's why I read the small print. They don't all arrive together. They can arrive in separate packages. So, and they'll arrive before Easter. That's all you know. And it's quite specific that it's like 8 flower heads or something, or 9 flower heads. So, like, basically just take like you're getting a box of flowers, sent. It's a flower delivery.
Wait, are you kidding me?
Separately, you're getting sent the cup of tea and the pot of tea and the pot of honey. I mean, it's like, you know what, like, people throughout history have put a load of rubbishy junk into a jar and slapped a label on it and sold it. But it's actually quite hard to do, because at a mass scale, it is hard to do. Like, Meghan is actually, if she wears something, and I have been told this by fashion brands, if she wears something, people do tend to buy it, and it does tend to sell out. But that's very, very different to manufacturing your own line of products, marketing them and selling them. And like, the marketing of this brand is now just completely revolves around her and her family. And we know that there are massive problems in how Harry and Meghan completely fundamentally disagree about the commercialization of the children.
Oh, absolutely. Before we get to that, though, let me just point out that, yes, when she does wear something, it sells out. However, she tried to monetize that with a shop my and say, well, why don't I just make the money? And so, for example, I'm wearing a dress from Tucker. All right. Somebody has commented, I like your dress. Great. Go to Tucker and buy it. She was like, no, I want the money. So she set up a shop my, and it didn't do so well. So much so that she had to pull it down after a couple months. So I think people might want to see something and be like, okay, that looks cute, but they don't want to feel like she's shoving it down their throats. Not to mention, I live near a Whole Foods. That's the expensive grocery store. Okay. If I went and got those same flowers, some box of organic tea and organic honey from a small manufacturer, that would cost me about $60, $70, but not 300. And I know they're all going to arrive at the same damn time. It was a lot. You know what I mean? But then it also kills me because she's keeping posting, and she also did the bit with Lily again. Now, I'm starting to actually fear for Archie. I think somebody needs to put him on a milk carton because no one's actually seen him. And she's always like, Lily, and Lily's little hand is here, or her face is obscured and her hair is there by something, you know. And Lily is helping her with the flowers, and she talks to Archie off screen, and you're like, oh, what's going on? What do you make of that? The children, more and more of the children. And now for the last, well, it's Friday, the last 3 days, she's been posting every day.
It's completely bonkers. The whole thing, I mean, I get it, you know, sure, maybe Lily is more willing to be photographed than a boy. You know, I have a son and a daughter. I wouldn't say that either of them particularly liked being photographed and put on websites and social media, and, you know, not they ever did that, but even sent on WhatsApp to family, friends. I'd say that Archie's just old enough to realize what the hell is going on, and is like, I don't want to be in your advert, Jam. Yeah, like, honestly, I think that's what it is. I think they're probably hyper aware of it. I think probably they've all, you know, it's well known what the schools that they go to and all that kind of stuff. You know, they go. I think it's like, you know, I think they are starting to get to the age where they're being exposed to this stuff, and it's the problem is that's exactly the reason why Harry's saying don't put your kids on screen, don't commercialize them. That's exactly what he's saying, and it's like, you know, they're best mates with like the Brooklyn Beckham. Look how it turned out for Brooklyn Beckham. Like, that is not a happy story. You know, that is a proper family tragedy of like just totally created by the parents' obsession with social media and with promoting themselves on social media. That is what that whole story is created for. And I'm sorry, like, I don't care whether you love Brooklyn or you love David or you love, that's not what that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that the whole story, whoever you think was a brat and whoever you think wasn't a brat or what have you, beyond that, it's a story about a family that fundamentally probably were very loving and probably did want to do for the best of their kids, etc., as we all do, but was completely corrupted by being commercialized on social media. And it's like, it's like they're deliberately doing it. I think it's absolutely nuts. And I think it's going to end in tears, actually. And I think it's going to be very interesting when we get to the, you know, Archie memoir and the Lily memoir, the Archie interviews and the Lily interviews, because I don't know how those kids are going to feel about having been roped into their parents' crappy commercial business that, you know, is frankly Netflix have walked away from, and how they're going to feel about having no contact with their family when they realize that their grandfather, who they've been not allowed to see or not enabled to see, was the King of England. I think they might be a little bit like, why didn't we ever meet the guy?
Hang on, why? Well, also, it's ironic and hypocritical because Meghan and Harry are such good friends with Brooklyn, and he's moaned to them about how from birth he was on camera, and now they're doing the same thing to their kids. But the other big issue that the couple have is, hold on, this. I don't know. It was the publishing deal with Penguin Random House. It was one of the only original deals that was still standing. Netflix is over. Spotify is over. Limitada is over. And they both, and I use it very loosely, they both got between $20 and $40 million for a multi-book deal. Harry got over 20 million for Spare. Everything else has flopped. She had the Boy on a Bench children's book. And then I had the story at News Nation this week that she has also tried to do 2 more books for them. Penguin Random House has said, turn them both down. One was about leadership and charity. Another, has been reported and denied by them that it was, what if we did a divorce book? Teehee. And so they're now at this point where the money is all running out. And the issue is they think that because Harry's book sold 6 million copies, well, they should be getting royalty checks every freaking week. But they don't know anything about the publishing business. Tom, you and I have both published several books, and you rarely, if ever, earn out, especially if you're given $20 million. However, I was also told that Camp Sussex is calling Penguin Random House on a regular basis saying, hey, is there any more money? Did we get a check yet? Where's the money? And it's raised a lot of eyebrows. And I'm also heard that they've annoyed and angered them so much with all the calls, but also their bad ideas and their high-handedness that they are actually refusing to work with them ever again.
I think the money thing is going to be a huge problem. That's fascinating what you're reporting there about Penguin Random House, and is absolutely fascinating. I kind of think in my gut that I think eventually we are going to get a Meghan book of some shape or form or other. I think either it's a book about getting divorced or it's another book about like how terrible the royal family were. But I was speaking about this on another show earlier today. I think that one of the biggest mistakes that they made with those books and the films and everything was that the Oprah interview came out as Prince Philip was dying. The Netflix film came out as Queen Elizabeth was dying, and Spare came out 2 months after Queen Elizabeth had died. And they looked so heartless and mean and horrible to be, slagging off this institution, that this person that we all felt very fondly, most of us felt very fondly for, was literally on her deathbed and suffer. As we subsequently found out, of course, they didn't tell us that, people didn't know this at the time, but she was suffering immensely at the time with physical pain, dying of bone cancer, a very, very painful condition. And I think that really, really damaged them. And I think that given Meghan's appalling timing, you can almost guarantee if she released a book, the day before it came out, Charles would die. So I think that we're not going to see anything from, if we do see a Meghan book, and it's interesting to hear you're saying that they're saying that they're not interested, but I wonder if they would be interested if it was like Spare Part 2, if it was a whole load of more secrets, a whole load of more blah, 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 blah.
Well, actually, it's interesting you say that, because one of the reasons that Penguin Random House was so pissed off is, part of the book process is you do the hard copy. And if anything happens in the year that the soft copy comes out, it's usually customary, also to help sell books, that you write an addendum or you update it. You do one extra chapter, and Harry put his foot down and refused to do anything else. A little work shy, that guy. But he was like, no, we're done. Also, he was in a fight with the ghostwriter, because the ghostwriter was like, yeah, it was pretty difficult. And Harry, they both kind of slammed each other a little bit, right? But you're right. I mean, I think if Meghan had a book, they would think about it. But the other issue is, Tom, I think people dislike her so much. I don't know if they would buy the book. I think they would read the excerpts and wait for people like you and me to possibly do a role play in the book. You be Harry, I be Meghan. Harry.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a $20 million fastest selling nonfiction book in history. But I think there'd be a couple of million in it for her. And as you say, they have no, where else is the money going to come from? I mean, ridiculous story. They've sold 17 million jars of jam. I mean, it's ridiculous. And again, and Tom Bauer, I heard being interviewed on the Daily Tea podcast the other day, said something quite funny. He said the amount of jam that they claim to have sold is more than Bon Maman have sold in a year. I mean, so it's quite funny when you put it in that context. But
I mean, to be fair, they do need money. And I had another story. So for people who don't know, my day job is for News Nation. It's amazing. I'm on air Wednesday through Sunday in the morning shows usually, and sometimes throughout the day. And I also write stories for them. And the other story I had for them was that they have severe domestic help issues. So it's all been public that executives have left, that they've had 11 PR people leave in 5 years. Their film teams cycle in and cycle out. Archwell is gone, all this stuff. But what isn't public is the staff. And the staff, not just the nannies. And to be fair, there is one nanny who's been with them for 5 years and somehow gets along very well with Meghan. But they have up to 4 nannies. So there are other positions that are constantly open. There are housekeepers. There are maintenance guys. There are gardeners. And these people cycle. And my friend Kinsey Schofield actually gave me the nanny application because you have to go through an agency, of course, because you want some background check. And according to this, nannies have to be prepared to work 50 hours a week, which is 10 more than California labor law allows. They also have to have CPR certified, that's fine, and know how to swim, fine. She wants them to speak French or Spanish. And you have to sign something that you're not going to text while you drive. And you also have to have this mental health thing going on. But it is really interesting that, especially because the Variety article that came out this week said that one of her excuses when she's mad at people, she would be on with Netflix on a Zoom with major managers. All right. And when she was mad or someone said something she didn't like, she would turn her Zoom screen off and just leave her, icon up, which is what you do when you're pissed off on a Zoom usually, or you have to go to the bathroom. And it would leak back to people that she was very angry about something that was said. And her lawyer, Michael, comes out and says, absolutely not. She's a working mother. And she didn't want to subject the team to her children and all this other crap. And you're like, okay, first of all, working mother, loosely, again. But this is a huge house with 9 bedrooms and 13 bathrooms and several offices. So the kids are on the other side of the house if she is indeed on an important call with Netflix. So it was all just very like, okay, I don't believe you again. Damn it. I mean, Tom, did you have nannies? Did you make them work 50 hours a week?
I feel like you wouldn't be like it would stand to reason that if people who work with them on a professional basis find them really, really hard to work for, and I mean, you don't have to go very far to find people who previously worked for the Sussexes in our world who have pretty memories of their time. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the same applies in the domestic servant. And I'm sure there's a kind of, network of nannies and maintenance men in Montecito that all have amazing stories down at the bars,
Yes.
The time they worked for Meghan and Harry and the stuff they got up to and blah, blah, blah. And it wouldn't surprise me at all. And I think, they've made it very clear that it's one rule for them and another rule for people who work for them. So it's amazing.
No, you're quite right. But also the other thing is that in the story, I point out that someone who worked for them said Meghan was wonderful for 6 months. And it goes back to all the stories at the palace where at first she was just so eager and excited and lovely, and then the tide would turn because she needed someone to either pick on or something didn't go her way. And it just seems absurd. At some point you would think that she'd look in the mirror and be like, Well, if everyone is saying the same thing, everyone can't be. Could it possibly be me? You know,
well, there's an amazing story, wasn't there? In People, was it People magazine, where the fan, you know, after she'd been accused of being the devil in high heels, or whatever, which actually I did quite a lot for on the Daily Beast on that story, because I knew people who worked for her and just did some stuff of their recollections, and they did this amazing story in People magazine with literally their head of PR going, "I love working for her; she's fantastic," and people saying, you say, I feel like a plant that's been watered. It's like, that's such a totally normal thing to say. That, you know, that's how I would describe it. And there were these people, and then it was so funny because there was also a lady called Catherine Saint Laurent, I think, who was like their chief of staff for 5 minutes, who came from the Gates Foundation and left. And like her comment was something like, I had a very interesting time working for them. Or they are very consequential people. Or say, I can't remember quite what it was. But it was a long way.
I gotta cut in because, by the way, for those who don't know, in the Mad Libs of celebrity interviews or big people interviews, the word interesting basically means hellish. And it's, you know, it's kind of like, working with so-and-so, it's like working with my uncle. Also means my lecherous uncle, you know. All these things that people say, we know what you're really saying. But I do. And then there comes this story, Tom. Hold on. What? Meghan unfollowed by Netflix boss Ted Sarandos and Netflix chief content officer Bella Bajaria. And I have to point out, because people are like, did he ever follow her? You're like, A, yes, and B, he follows Wanda Sykes, Amy, like go on Instagram. It's amazing who he follows.
Right.
And all the Netflix execs who are indeed done and probably never want to be reminded of this catastrophe ever again. Press the unfollow link, especially after, and I noticed you did a really good story, which I'd like you to talk about, how she pissed them off with the actual separation of Netflix and as ever.
Yeah, so it's a wild story. So Ted Sarandos, of course, Meghan's biggest fan for many years, always saying that she was great and standing by her and blah, 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 blah. Finally had enough. And the ultimate diss these days is to unfollow somebody on Instagram. So he has unfollowed her. Well, I have to say, I don't think I would know or care if someone unfollowed me on Instagram. But there we are. So poor old Meghan, unfollowed by Ted Sarandos. And I have to say, it's not surprising at all that they launched, that Netflix did this kind of fight back in Variety. And it was the classic kind of Variety piece. So for those of you who don't know, Variety's like a bit more gossipy, a bit more like Page Six, whereas the Hollywood Reporter thinks of itself as more like the paper of record, you know. And so Variety always does this, where it has these gossipy inside stories. It's by their chief reporter, a guy called Matt Donnelly. Like, obviously, Variety, huge deal in Hollywood. They're not going to write something unless they kind of know that Netflix are kind of basically going to be okay with it, you know. So they write this very scathing, and yeah, this is very good observation by Meghan here, and you can see that's the cover from a couple of years ago, written by
4 years ago,
Donnelly actually, and there's the cover from last week. Wow, what a difference that makes. And yeah, so you know. And then, so there's all these there's the whole story in Variety, and then they run the sort of form denials from Netflix, saying, no, everything's fine. They're absolutely nightmare. We hate them. And then it's like a day later, unfollowed. Oh dear, that's the end, Meghan. If he hasn't even got time for you. And then he has to have lawyers on the call if he's going to speak to her. And like, I mean, it's amazing. The detail in that story is amazing.
Well, and also it's funny because
he should have just written a book about it. He should have kept it all. He should have left Variety, and he should have written an amazing book about Meghan and Netflix, because that is a story waiting to be told.
Yes, I agree. And also what I love is that Meghan's lawyer, again, came back and said, that is absolutely untrue. Meghan and Harry are very good friends with Ted Sarandos and his wife, Nicole Avant. They hang out with them socially. They talk to them all the time. By the way, they do live in the same small town, and Nicole Avant still follows Meghan. So Ted Sarandos' wife still does follow Meghan, but it is interesting because, listen, of course, Ted's going to be like, hey, Nicole, can you go talk to them? Or, hey, guys, how's it going? I'm going to keep glad handing you because we all live in the same neighborhood. I don't want any eggs on my yard, even from your chickens. And yeah, it's all so great. I got to go get a drink. Honey, you want something? And ditch his wife with that couple. We've seen it happen all the time. It happens constantly in LA. But if there's ever anything business related, I'm sure he's like, hold on, it's Beyonce.
Yeah, it's Beyonce. Paula, I think you should write a book about Netflix and Meghan. I think it'd be a brilliant book with all your showbiz contacts. I think it'd be
my God. Well,
I'm going to have to go fairly soon.
Before you leave, I just want you to watch this because with all of this hideous week, this is what happened. Hold on. Well,
He just became a part of it.
So, Tom, just an ending. You have the worst week of your life. Do you then show up at another event? Because it seems that she is now showing up every day to something. And do you show up after you've been disinvited from A-list events to the D-list events with your best friend, Kelly Zafton? And hang out on a carpet?
It's so humiliating. It's so humiliating. Like, obviously, 5-6 years ago, they would have expected that they would be at least on the red carpet, maybe on the podium, maybe picking up an award, and instead they're at this kind of, like, I'm sure it's a great charity that her friend runs or whatever, like, not to undermine the charity, and all of that, but it's the way that she's kind of stroking her belly and like, also, I mean, like, Meghan talking about parents and stuff is not a good idea. Do you know what I mean?
No.
It's like she's just like, it's just crazy. I mean, the one thing I will say about Meghan that I do kind of slightly take my hat off to her is that she must have a skin like a rhinoceros because like she's just there grinning away and clearly like, mugging for the cameras, like nothing bad has happened.
By the way, only when it comes to getting public attention, because if you dare criticize her, the head blows up. But Tom, thank you so much for joining me. I needed to run everything by you because you're my touchstone. And thank you guys all for joining us. And hold on, don't forget to like, subscribe, and Tom is the royalist on Substack. What?
Maybe.
All right. Bye, guys.
And the interview with Tom Bower, hopefully, is going to be on Tuesday on the YouTube channel. So really looking forward to that. And Paula's on that show as well. Woo! I'm going to go. Bye.